It's now my pleasure and honour to invite Dr. Jane Cloke, who's our programme manager, to the stage, who's going to talk about our impact plan with some initial examples from our themes.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for sticking with us for this session where we're going to explore how we as an ARC are making a difference and how we'll show that we've made a difference. So, as Mark says, I'm the programme manager for ARC North West Coast, and the session will be myself as a pre-record, and then secondly, we've got Stephen Dodds, pre-record from Stephen Dodds as well, who is from the EPIC team. And then we have Alison McLaughlin and Ollie, who are much braver than Steve and I, and they will be presenting in person. And then we'll have an opportunity for some discussion. So I'm not sure what the eye masks are for, but if you do decide to have a snooze, could you just keep the volume down? Thank you very much. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session where we will discuss with you what we are doing to ensure that the work we do together in ARC North West Coast makes a difference and that people, communities and organisations in our region benefit from the work we do together. All of us deserve to see that public money is used effectively and efficiently and that we contribute to improving health and social care in the region. In this session, I'll give an overview of how we are planning to maximise the impact of our work. Ollie Butters, Alison McLaughlin and Steve Dodds will talk through some examples of how our impact plan is being implemented, and then we will have some time set aside for discussion and any questions you may have. Before we start, let's all land on the same page with what we mean when we talk about research impact. Examples of this include changes in what we know about something, how that then changes how we do things, our practice, and perhaps how that then changes local or even national policies. To show that we have had an impact, we need to know who we have influenced, not just other researchers, our peers, but groups such as policymakers, practitioners, the public, communities, and whether that's residents in a particular area, or a group with a particular interest or practice. The converse is true. So if we want our research to be influential and have impact, then we need to know who we should be working with and following up with them. We also need to pay attention to the different types of impact that are possible. So, for example, by publishing a paper, we could increase awareness of inequalities in outcomes for rehab and stroke survivors. By providing HIAT workshops, we can increase skills to integrate equity into research projects. By bringing researchers, public and practitioners to work on a project together, we could build enduring collaborations and connectivity. Alison and Ollie will be talking about how the Stroke Roundtable and our CHAI theme are putting some of these ideas into practice. Over the last year, we have been developing our plan to maximise the impact of ARC, including tools, resources, and how we will show the difference our programme has made. All of us has a role to play in maximising our impact. Our vision is that not only do we have a shared understanding of our pathways to impact, but that each of us has the tools to support their work, whether that's a project or a theme of one of our strategic areas, such as public involvement and engagement, the health equity mainstreaming strategy, and capacity building. As some of you will know, we've been working with Matter of Focus to help us map out our pathway to impact. And we do that by asking these questions. What do we do? Who do we work with? How do they react to the work we do with them? What do they gain and what do they do differently? Ultimately, what is the difference we hope to achieve? I think we'll know we've made a difference when we see that there is more funding going into research that acts on health inequities, Currently, there's a dearth of research there. That academia, practitioner, public partnerships are sustained and funded, and that health and social care providers embed health equity lens in their work. This is our programme level pathway to impact, and Steve's going to talk about how the EPIC team have used this approach to map the theme's impact pathway. And here's an excerpt to show you what we mean by a pathway and how those questions translate into stepping stones along that pathway. The conditions under which we anticipate impact will be realised are that we build strong partnerships with other organisations, communities and people. We conduct and disseminate good quality and relevant work across all of our themes. Member organisations have the time and the resources to make financial and in-kind contributions to the programme, and that there is sufficient appetite and capacity within member organisations to engage in programme activities. Stakeholders share research evidence and tools with their own networks, and those tools and resources are publicised and shared. Policymakers and other stakeholders are guided by that research and the evidence and recommendations from the programme. And all of our research partners learn by doing, gaining experience and skills in engaging public and communities to enable systems and structures for public involvement in research, design and implementation to be embedded. As a team, we've agreed how we'll put a plan into action with short and medium-term goals. And this includes planning for impact at the outset of any new project or initiative, identifying who or what we expect to change, why or how these changes will happen, and what can we learn, what do we need to modify so that we generate impact. We'll continue working with Matter of Focus to nurture our impact and also to plan further knowledge mobilisation activities. Evidencing our story of change and the difference the programme is making and has made entails bringing together data, information and stories from the different levels of our programme across projects, themes and strategic areas, aggregating those layers of knowledge and analysis over time so that we can gain a deeper understanding of our impact. To help us evidence the impact we make, we are auditing the monitoring data we collect routinely so we can make the best use of the data we already collect. We'll also be conducting evaluations to collect further data that evidences impact, and some of you might already have been participants in some of those surveys, interviews and focus groups. We'll be creating a bank of case studies that is easily shared and relevant so we can show examples of the work we've done together and so that you can show your colleagues, your line manager, that changes can be evidence-based and also the benefits of working with ARC North West Coast. We do need to become more systematic at capturing some of that informal information from our stakeholders, particularly in situations where we sought to influence them to change their practice, their policy, or to improve their well-being. By bringing your time and experience to work with us, we can deliver a programme that is relevant to you by sharing the research evidence, tools and resources we've made together with your own networks. We can widen our influence and impact. By participating in our evaluations or monitoring activities, you can help us learn more about what works to generate impact. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Dodd from the Equitable Place-Based Health and Care team based at Lancaster University. For short, during the rest of this talk, I'll refer to our team as EPIC. Now, for those of you who don't know, EPIC's overarching goal is to address health inequalities through place-based approaches, focusing on integrating health and care systems to ensure they're responsive to the needs of people, communities and places, while emphasising collaborative research and community engagement. Today, I'm going to talk about EPIC's experiences of impact planning, and in doing so give you an example of how it can work at a theme level. So this process of impact planning for EPIC has involved extensive deliberation within the team as we've discussed modelling and conceptualising our impact. This process has had a number of advantages for us, such as giving us space to reflect on what we really want to achieve and providing us with the opportunity to think afresh about the impacts we're having beyond narrow metrics such as academic citations. We've also had the opportunity to reconsider if we're having the impacts we need to, and the chance to examine the evidence we have available to demonstrate our impact. To give you a more practical idea of what the process has involved, I'll now give you a bit of background about OutNav, the online platform we've used to record our impact planning. The overall purpose of OutNav is for the storage of impact data and to provide a structure to help users think through their research impact in a systematic way. It's thought to be of particular value for modelling impact for complex organisations and initiatives focused on people-based change, where simple numerical data cannot capture the full extent of impact. The categories and concepts used in OutNav have been useful for EPIC and have given structure to our brainstorming, helping us to crystallise our purpose and clarify our impact story. On this slide, I'll share the main output from our use of OutNav, which is the outcome map you can see on screen. The outcome map is a type of logic model that OutNav's creators, Matter of Focus, have made the centrepiece of the software. As mentioned by Jane, the outcome map is based on 6 simple headings designed to help research teams reflect on their impact. These are what we do, who with, how they feel, what they learn and gain, what they do differently, and what difference does this make. Using these headings as prompts, we as a team have discussed our impact at length. Resulting from this deliberation, co-production emerged as a central theme within our outcome map. I won't talk through the entire outcome map now, but I'd like to just draw your attention to the way that co-production is a thread running throughout it. For example, in the What We Do column, you can see that we aim to develop research incorporating the views of practitioners and non-practitioners. Similarly, in the What They Learn and Gain column, you can see that we aim to raise the esteem in which the views of non-academic colleagues are held and raise the level of respect for co-production. Lastly, in the What Difference Does This Make column, our overall goal is expressed as creating a sustainable ecosystem for co-production. So, as you can see, our team has decided that co-production should be the ever-present theme evident throughout the whole map. Not only does OutNav facilitate thinking about the different stages of impact, as you saw with the outcome map on the previous slide, it also supports the indexing of data sources to each part of the outcome map. Having created our outcome map, we in EPIC are now at the stage of substantiating the various elements of our map with the evidence of impact we hold. On screen is an example of the data sources and success criteria we have created within OutNav as tangible indicators for one of our aims. In this case, the aim is to contribute to collaborative networks that give voice to the full range of stakeholders. As we've gone through the process of adding impact data to every part of our outcome map, it has enabled us to compare our aims with our evidence, showing where our data are strongest and where we need to gather more. Highlighting areas of weaker evidence is an advantage of the process and should not be seen as a bad thing. To end this slide about evidence of impact, an important lesson learned for me is that diverse forms of evidence can be brought to bear. Here I found the saying that not everything that counts can be counted and not everything that can be counted counts is a helpful reminder. Having brought you up to date with EPIC's progress with impact planning, that just leaves me to tell you about our plans for how we will continue the process. Consistent with our commitment to co-production, our approach to the outcome map is not to see it as a static document. Rather, we know it will be subject to change as we learn more about our objectives and gain knowledge from our collaborators. As we continuously revise and update the map in future, an advantage of reflecting on it as a team is that we can ensure our individual research projects are embedded within a strategic framework and that they contribute to a broader set of objectives. Lastly, another part of our team's agenda for impact planning is using our outcome map as the basis for presentations of our strategy and as an engaging way of articulating our identity as a team. Having given you that brief overview of EPIC's progress with impact planning, I hope I have given you some flavour of the benefits of carefully thinking through the impacts we are having as teams and as an organisation. As someone who's played a role in impact planning for EPIC, I'll now share a few reflections and observations on the process. Firstly, for an outcome map to be accurate, I feel it's important that its content reflects the input of the whole team. To secure the interest and input of the whole team, my belief is that a key motivator for getting involved can be the importance of impact beyond academic metrics and our obligation to achieve more. Another factor I feel can encourage the participation of the team is the creation of a sense of frankness and openness about progress, so people aren't discouraged or hindered from taking part by fears they may have about their personal level of impact. Lastly, I would emphasise the value of parsimony for the exercise of impact planning and logic modelling more generally. By this, I mean that outcomes maps should be as simple as possible while still effectively articulating our plans for achieving impact. This means keeping a cap on unnecessary elements within the outcome map and placing a high burden of justification on the inclusion of additional elements. To give you an example of what I mean, EPIC's outcome map started off as a profusion of themes, but gradually the team has refined it into a simpler structure. This process can be difficult because different team members inevitably have differing ideas about what they wish to be included. In this type of situation, the goal should be to consolidate these themes into a simpler framework that still conveys the core concepts team members wish to be included. To finish my talk, I'd just like to zoom out from EPIC's impact plan and consider how it relates to the rest of the ARC Northwest Coast. So the most obvious link from our impact plan to the broader strategy of the ARC is that EPIC's commitment to fostering co-production is a valuable and indeed necessary feature of the ARC's broader strategic aim to make a contribution to improving the quality and efficiency of health and social care services, in the process reducing health inequalities and creating a more equitable region. Beyond this, I feel that the bigger picture for theme-level impact planning is that if themes can create their own rigorous plans for impact, it can foster a symbiotic relationship between the ARC's overarching vision and those of the individual themes. In other words, there can be a feedback relationship where theme-level plans reflect the broader strategy of the ARC, but also shape it from the bottom up. Thanks for listening. I hope I've shed some light on what impact planning at the theme level can look like. In the spirit of co-production, EPIC's impact plan is still a work in progress and we welcome feedback. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with a question at the end of this session or via email.
So I'm Alison McLaughlin, I'm part of the implementation and capacity building team, and I'm here to talk to you about some of our impact capture around a specific work theme that we've got, which is the Stroke Roundtable. So, for context, I need to tell you what the Stroke Roundtable is, but it brings together people with expertise in stroke care and or implementation, and members of the public with lived experience of stroke services, and intends to have an impact on patient care and outcomes at a strategic level. Easy, hey? So you can imagine the aims are broad, and you can see them up here, and it's things like understanding best practice in terms of implementation, identifying gaps in the system and developing plans to address these, all with a focus on patient and staff involvement, to share learning and successes and challenges of system-wide implementation efforts, to support uptake and implementation across different stroke care settings and hopefully geographical regions. To ensure that resulting outputs have a clear focus on delivering equitable care and to learn from those implementation efforts that may inadvertently widen inequalities in stroke prevention and care delivery. And to create a framework for scaling up successful system-wide implementation in stroke, which could be applied to other health, public health and social care priority areas embarking on similar system-wide transformation. And my role today is not to explain why impact capture is important, because you've already heard that, but to describe how, as a group of diverse individuals from across multiple organisations, we're trying to go about doing it. So as you can see, we've developed aims of our impact capture, and the key aim really is to build an impact narrative for the Stroke Roundtable. We're aware that the impact of the group will be much greater than the more I say easily captured, but not necessarily easily captured, but those tangible outputs, a bit like Stephen was saying about those countable things and what can count easily and what counts.
and that it's important that we also capture those added value examples of impact. And crucially, we need to be able to understand and build on the successful processes and relationships of the future, because that's one of the key things that the roundtable brings us. But how do we do that? So we all know that projects and systems are complex, and everything can have an effect on other elements, and this is not always visible, let alone measurable. And we're often busy doing within health and social care settings, and we need to take time to think about and plan for those impacts, and not carry out surface ad hoc impact capture, because it's readily countable and comparable and easy. So instead, we're trying to utilise a framework that acknowledges that that impact is complex, and that there's lengthy periods, there's dynamic context, and there's lots of different causal factors, and stakeholder and impacts that will impact on themselves as well. So given that our stories are multidimensional and based on complex interactions, it's not about removing that complexity. You're never going to get that. But hopefully it's going to make pathways and connections easy to identify. So we have chosen to use a particular framework for impact capture developed by Edwards and Meager, and it was developed through Forestry Commission work, and it was an approach that was developed and piloted back in 2019, and it defines 5 types of impact, as you can see here. So the idea is that the range of impact, looking at the range of impact types in using this framework, liberates or authorises those involved to go beyond conventional instrumental changes when searching for their impacts. But it's instrumental changes. So these are things that change plans, decisions, behaviours. They're the direct influence impacts. We've got conceptual impacts where there's changes to knowledge, awareness, attitude, emotion. So how those people think and feel and know. Capacity building, which is obviously close to my heart for those that know you, and that's around those changes to skills and expertise, and it's around things like training or developing collaborative abilities. Enduring connectivity, changes to the quality of relationships and the trust within them, and then culture and attitudes, which is about knowledge exchange and research impact itself. There's no fixed hierarchy or a linear structure. All have value in their own right. And although the last 2 are more process-based, they make other sorts of impacts more likely. So the framework makes you think about 8 causal factors about why or how changes occur. And it makes us ask those underlying questions which Jane's already touched on. Who or what has changed? How do we know? Why or how did those changes occur? And what lessons can be learned from those? And that asking how do you know leads to gathering of evidence, including recognition of telling indicators of change. So those questions encourage users to step back and think about what lessons have been learned regarding impact identification and generation to plan actions and hopefully improve future efforts. Sorry, I've gone forward too fast. So it thinks about what worked, what could be done or have done differently, and what could or should be done in the future are the questions that we're asking. And we've used the framework to stimulate critical reflection, ideally involving users, which we do as part of the Stroke Roundtable work, and other stakeholders. And it's throughout the project cycle, as you've already alluded to. So it's at the planning, the mid-course and the final stages. And I can't go into all the details of everything we've done today, but one of the first things that we've looked at is the stakeholders, and the framework identifies 5 broad categories which can be further subdivided, and that's about the influence as well as being influenced by the process and its outputs. And for us, it's made us think about the core people that are attending the Stroke Roundtable, making sure that we regularly address who's members and that it's not a static group that doesn't move on and evolve depending on need and what's the thing. And it also gives us a better plan of who we hope to influence, as Jane alluded to. I have nicked the PDSA, but it was just to give you that indication that it's part of a cycle that we do. It's ongoing. We've established we've started things, we've got ongoing work with it. It's been agreed by all our members, so it became and is now a regular agenda point on all our meetings. So before we get to any other business, we all talk about the impact plans and what's come out from the things that we're doing. It establishes what the core work is that we should be doing, so that we're moving forward on the things that are going to be impactful to our for those end products. And as I say, it's all things. So these are just some of the planned indicators of success. So we've got work ongoing at the moment, a research study looking at the exploration of the implementation of system level changes in stroke, and that's allowing us to better understand the practice in terms of implementation. And this hopefully will allow us to develop a logic model which will be used to support system-wide change, not only in stroke, but also will have utility in other areas, as we talked about as one of our broad aims. We've got evidence of connected research communities at a strategic level. We've got people that can connect with experts. We've developed a database across the northwest coast of research interested individuals within stroke care. We've done work in terms of increasing capacity, both for research and implementation. So we've got internships linked to Catalyst funding projects, which are stroke-specific, Squire-led projects across the world. And hopefully we'll have evidence of that application outside the context of the stroke. And we do an ongoing evaluation to make sure that the work that we're doing remains relevant to the people involved. So it's the group role, the membership, the actions. It's not a static process. We haven't started at one point looking to going from A to B. We've kind of gone A, B, C, C, A. And it's interesting and dynamic and hopefully useful. So just to finish, this is no longer us. We're not blindfolded. We're out there catching the sweeties as we go. And hopefully this has been useful just to show you the work. Thank you.
I'm Ollie Butters. I'm going to talk about what we're doing in the care and health informatics theme. We're perhaps a slightly different place in our journey than some of the previous talks. We're at a bit of an earlier stage thinking about our impact. So very quickly, CHI. Lots of projects going on. There's lots of very data-focused projects. Data is very much the beating heart of CHI, and you know, we're a cross-cutting theme. It's important to remember that, I think. Now, sometimes when we talk about impact, it can be a bit easy to focus on that sort of that end goal, you know, interventions that have been developed and implemented, that kind of stuff. But to get there, there's a whole bunch of work that has to go on much further upstream, you know, all that data collection and processing and analysing, all that fun stuff. And that tends to be where a lot of the work goes on in CHI. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this end of the spectrum today. So one of the bits of work we've been looking at is around sort of data sets in the region and how they can be combined. You know, there's lots of different data sets, things like GP data, hospital data, that sort of stuff. It all sits in separate silos. And if we want to do research with that data, we have to bring it all together, join it all up, and then we can use that combined data set. And that goes on in the region. There's a project called Cypher that's been pulling all of this stuff together for a good few years now. And lots of ARC projects, lots of university projects, and lots of NHS business intelligence and business analyst folk use that combined data. So one of the things that we've spent quite a lot of time doing is looking at that combined data set, trying to really understand how that data is joined together, what's missing from that data set. You know, if there's a particular GP practice that's missing from the data set, where, let's imagine that GP practice is in an area of high deprivation, then the projects that use the data, they need to know about that, they need to be aware of that, they need to be able to fold that information into their analyses. Otherwise, interventions that come out won't necessarily help the people in areas of highest deprivation. So this sort of stuff is really important. And so we've spent a lot of time working on this bit of the spectrum. Another bit of work we've been doing is to try and move from a sort of neighbourhood level analysis to more of a household level analysis. So typically when we do analyses, we look at neighbourhoods of maybe 1,500 people, that sort of size. And the trouble is, when we look at that level, we don't necessarily know sort of where everyone, of course we don't know where everyone lives in that neighbourhood, but we don't know if people live together in that neighbourhood. We don't know if there's a concentration of perhaps long-term conditions in particular areas of the neighbourhood. And so we end up having this sort of aggregate view of a neighbourhood, and that's really important for protecting people's privacy. But it's not great for our data analysis. We can only go so far with that sort of model. So one of the things we've been doing is to try and move to more of a household level analysis. And in this, we're essentially assigning a unique reference number to every household, and then we pull that reference number through to every individual. And then we can start to say, well, if all of these people live in the same house, maybe we can look to see if having a particular long-term condition has an effect on other people in the household. And we couldn't do that sort of thing before. But we're starting to be able to do this now and still not having information about people's actual address. We don't know where they live. I have no idea where this number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 would be. It's just a house somewhere. And so we can do better analyses like this while still protecting people's privacy. And so, it's a very short presentation. I've shown 2 examples of how we're making data better in the region. By making the data better, it's more representative and we can get more accurate results. And we're working really closely with our NHS colleagues to raise awareness of how some of these analyses can have health inequalities built in if we're not careful. And we're helping to build capability to undertake more representative analysis in the region. Thank you.
Anyone got any questions? Well, I'll ask a question then.
Go on then, Darren.
Obviously, we look at the news and comms, and I know Ollie asked you this, but it's still a concern for me. Even though we're bought into the value of research and data, we see the NHS is selling data to American companies, etc. And I see a problem potentially with a lot of people wanting to withhold their data when they're seeing these stories. And as data experts, do you see that as a problem coming down the track?
So I'm going to suggest that we hold that question until the next session. We have a bit of a data expert coming up in the next session that will give a much better answer than I.
I thought you were the data expert.
Well,
I just think it's a general, that's growing.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem that's going to continue to grow, especially if, the NHS publicly declares the selling of data to whoever, wherever.
Perhaps I could ask you a question instead, Darren.
Yeah. I'm not the expert. Hang on a minute.
I'll join in now.
So you've seen some of the things that we're suggesting as impacts. What would you like to see as a comms person? What sort of things would you like to see captured? And how do you think we should be going about doing that?
We need evidence that we're making a change to service users' lives, to when they go to the hospital, when they go to the local authority. There's so many good things that we're doing, but this is a wider audience here today, but I've said internally, the NIHR are coming to comms leads and saying, show us the difference, show us what you want, show us the impact. These people are in London who are funding us, and they want to see difference. They want to see a return on investment, but they want to see examples, not necessarily media coverage. They want case studies where they can say, oh, they're doing that in that trust, I get it. And it's communicating some of this complexity that we do into a simple, one-sided case study. Here's what we set out to do. We found this, and we've done this with that data. And we've got to try and explain it simply back to people who are not research experts, but understand the changes and benefits what their investment's made in a nutshell.
So I've got, yep, go for it.
I mean, I second what Darren says, but I'm also saying from sort of the patient and the public side is that, you know, they're looking at how is this going to impact me, and how it's going to improve or change their quality of life. And as a public advisor, you know, people ask me questions, why do you do it, what do you do, and how are you going to change things? And I think that's what we've got to communicate out to people, that, you know, this is public money, this research is done for these reasons, and the, you know, impact of this is, and again, it's all about communication.
Some of those answers are there. I think we've seen today in the examples that are coming through. We've got to tease them out, get them into case studies and get them out there to the powers that be, the patients and all the other stakeholders, to demonstrate the benefit of what we're doing. But you know, we can be very biased in research sometimes.
So those case studies, so there's two other me's there. They say, what difference does that make to me? One of them is the Minister of Health and Social Care, and the other is the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So they're asking the NIHR, what difference has your investment made to me? How am I getting a more cost-effective health and social care service? How am I getting a more cost-effective use of my investment, both in research through the NIHR and in the health and social care system? And so the NIHR is constantly asking us for case studies that summarise in simple terms, simple enough for a minister to understand, about what we've done, what difference it's made, and how much it's cost, and preferably how much it's saved, or done things more cost effectively. That's what they want a continual stream of to evidence through to government. And I'm afraid that is still has a P to it. It's not necessarily the civil servants that want that, it's the ministers for their speeches and for their campaigning. And that doesn't have to be P with a capital P, political, but it will feed into that system. So it's those good news stories about, look what we're doing for you with your taxpayer investment. And I guess the reality for us is if there's going to be an ARC2, and I think that decision is currently being made because of the mid-term review they've just done on ARCs, that is very much based on those value for money stories that they've collected from the ARCs to show for this £150 million investment of public money over 5 years, what have we got for it? How does it improve care? How does it save money? Is that Sarah itching for a mic?
Thanks, Mark. I was just wondering, a question to the panel perhaps, does the funder acknowledge the changes that are further upstream, such as Ollie's advice to the NHS on increased data security measures that will allow more evidence generation in the end, but will be a bit more slow to come?
Yeah, I think absolutely, I think they would. I think probably what's really important to show though is if you think this is quite upstream, then what you think the downstream benefit is going to be. What is it going to allow the health service to do or researchers to be able to do? And I think we have to think of these different types of impacts and as almost building blocks. As Alison mentioned, it's not a linear thing. It's what do we need to? You need that direct. I don't mean institutional. What do I mean? The one that begins with I. To start off with, so the papers, things like that. But then it's also building capacity to be able to look at things in that particular way, use those new methodologies, use those new types of data, those cleaner data.
And I think, sorry, I was going to say some of the things that are harder to capture, and I don't think that really came across maybe in my talk, but I work with the interns and it's quite easy in a way to sort of look at their impact within a member organisation, although even that can be difficult in terms of that delineation of research activity across. But with the stroke round table, it's those relationships, and I think that's the bit that we struggle with. So that there are innovations within stroke care and the move to thrombectomy, and we didn't have thrombolysis 20 years ago. When I first started, we didn't do anything like that. Those things are going ahead, but the stroke round table I see as instrumental because it brings together those key people to have those conversations. It keeps the patient voice at the centre of it, and it reduces time for those individuals because they're in the right place at the right time to bring those decisions together. And that's the bit that's harder to capture, and that's why we're using the framework with Jane for that.
I'm aware of time as overall chair, and I was just going to make a point on Sarah's point. There was in our theme, we had a presentation from Alex, who's submitted his PhD on health inequalities and AI in primary care. And he did a case study where he looked at a recently completed AI, artificial intelligence system for predicting risk in patients in primary care from cardiovascular disease. And he was able to show that because of the data that the AI was using, it was significantly underestimating the risk in particular patient groups. Now, those are likely to be patient groups that are very suspicious about the things you're talking about, is who's getting those data and what they're doing them with, and how are they using them. Same people who often don't want vaccination, who are very wary of lots of different things that are happening in society and believe lots of conspiracy theories. So if we can reassure them and show their health system and the care system how to capture those data much more widely and get good data from those vulnerable groups, we'll remove those inherent biases so they can use AI more effectively. Is there a question coming from the online? Yes, please.
Hello.
Please ask us. Terry.
Hi, Ollie. Thank you very much for that presentation. That was really good. I just wondered, in general, how can the profile of ARC CHI and the activities they do, how can they be raised, do you think, within ARC and also beyond ARC? Because it's sort of the hidden engine in a way, or the hidden factor, and even explaining what CHI do, which you did an admirable presentation on, is difficult for some people. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about how we can fly the flag more visibly.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Terry. I guess probably the thing we can do now, really, is to try and start talking more to particularly our colleagues in sort of the STE programme and CIPHER, you know, the more sort of people that are putting the data together that's being used by other data sets and other projects, and try and get more, I guess, feedback, positive case studies, that sort of stuff to really try and reflect back to us what's going on. I mean, I'm sure if we were to ask Jim if the impact that we're having within CHI is reflecting back into the NHS in a positive way, I would imagine, I hope that he would say that it is a good thing. And you know, I guess it's about trying to more constructively have those conversations so that we can capture that impact.
If I might add as well, actually, I guess it's also about involving others in planning your knowledge mobilisation activities and delivering some of those knowledge mobilisation activities as well. It's, you know, the building blocks of those enduring connectivities, the building blocks of building people's capacity to know and understand. Yeah, I think those. So I think the framework would help you think quite systematically about what you need to do, about what we need to do collectively.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, Mark. Just a point, a bit of advice. I suppose there's a microphone here. A bit of advice. Something to think about is certainty. How certain are you that that is the impact and that's happening? So there's a bit about thinking about how certain you are. So there's that bit about, there is a methodology called process tracing which talks about straw in the wind and hoop test and all this business. So there's an element of that in this. But there's another bit which
that's part of the approach
right.
as well.
And then there's the uniqueness of what you're doing. So the dilemma that I think sometimes we face is that, and it happens, that that everybody does something and then you're going, well, we had this impact, but actually everybody's done it. So if everybody is talking about changing your diet, how do you know your bit of changing the diet is what had that impact? That's the struggle bit. So there's a little bit about thinking about how certain are you in what you did, but also how unique you are. And I think that's the bit, my observation, I suppose, is I don't necessarily see us saying how unique are the things that we're doing. So I hope that makes sense.
I think what I would counter with that, though, is that we're not running an experiment as such. It's not we're not doing an experimental design. This is more to do with painting a picture to as a narrative of what we've been able to achieve. But it also, I think, once you start reflecting on what you have and haven't achieved, then you can think about, well, what do we need to do more of to have a better impact, to reach into some of those stakeholders, those policymakers that we've not managed to reach. And I suppose ultimately this is all about, you know, not just doing more research because we can and we can get another grant, but let's make sure that the work that we do, we develop until it can be developed no more, but it's reached the parts that other bears don't reach.